Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janmadyasya yato nivayad itaratas chartesva vigyaswarat.
Janmadyasya yatam vayalitaratas chati svavigyasvara.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Atsurayaha.
Tenne Brahma Vidaya Adhikavaye Mujanti Asuraya.
Tejo Varimidam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Misha.
Tejo Varimridan Jata Vinimayo Jatra Trisargo Misha.
Damna Svena Sada Nirastakuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
Damna Svena Sada Nirastakuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of
O
Vasudeva.
all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of
I
Godhead.
offer my respectful obeisance unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universe.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested
He
universes.
is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond
And
him.
he is independent because there is no other cause beyond
It
him.
is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji,
It is she only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of
the
Brahmaji,
original living being.
the original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation
of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
of water seen the fire of land seen the water.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universes,
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature,
appear factual, although they are unreal.
appear factual, although they
I
are
therefore
real.
meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri
who is
Krishna,
eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental
which is
abode,
forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute.
Dharma projita taitra
Dharma Pruchita Katavatra
paramo nimatsaranam satam
Paramo Nirmasharanam
vedyam vastavam atra vastu
Vedyam Vastavam Astravastu
shivanam tapatrayon mulanam
Shivanam Taputrayo Manam
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni
Kim Vaparir Ishwaraha
Kimva Parirish
Sadyo Hridi Avarujyate Tra
Sadya Rudya
Krite
Varidatitra
Bihi Sususubhistakshanat,
Prithvi Shushu Shavistakana,
completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activities which are material
This
motivated.
Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the high truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those who are fully pure in
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The high truth, their reality distinguished from religion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such truth are rooted in threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity,
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled with the great sage Vyasadeva in
is
maturity
sufficient in itself for God realization.
is sufficient itself for God.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other
As
scripture?
soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Law is established within his heart.
the Supreme Law is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
sukhamukad amrita dravya samyutam,
Sukamakad vridatravi sangitam,
pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam,
Pibata Bhagavatam rasamayam,
muhur aho raska bhuvi bhavukaha.
Mura Bora Sikha Bhagavatam.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
O excellent thoughtful man, relish Srimad
the
Bhagavatam.
mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literature.
The mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literature.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for
Although
all,
its nectarian juice was all relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberation.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna
Shrimadam Swakata Krishna
Punya Shravana Kirtana
Punya Shravana Kirtana
Hridyantaksto hi Bhadrani
Yavatantro Yavadrani
Vidunoti Suhitsatam.
Vidunoti Suritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic
or to
literature,
hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from it directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
is itself righteous activity.
it is self-righteous
And for one who
activity.
hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about
Lord Krishna is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's
acts
heart,
as a best wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing
and
friend,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the body, constantly engages in hearing of him.
Nastapresu abhadresu
Nasta Preshwa Bhadrishu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Seva
bhagavati uttamasloke
Bhagavati Uttamasloke
bhaktir bhavati naistaki.
Bhakti Bhavati Naisti.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the devotees,
and from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tadarajastamo Bhava
kamolobadayaschaye
Kama
cheta
Lobadayasya
itaranabhidam
Chita Iteranavidam
stifam sattve prasidati.
Sitam Sabbe Prasida.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional service,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
And thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam Prasanna Manaso
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha
Bhagavat Bhakti Yoga
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnana
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnana
Sangasya Jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure
the
goodness,
candidate remains steady in position,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional
and
service,
understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God
Vidyate
perfectly.
Hridaya Grantis
Hridaya Vidyante Grantis
Chidyante Sarva Samsaya
Chidyante Sarva Samshaya
Shiyante Jasya Karmani
Chidyante Chasya Karmani
Krista Evatmanishwari.
Krista Evadmaneshwari.
Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga severs the heart of the material
and
affection,
enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enable one to come at one to the stage of Samsham Samangramam,
understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
understanding Supreme Personality of God, the Absolute
I'm sorry. Understanding the Supreme Absolute Truth Personality of Godhead.
understanding the Supreme Absolute True Personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Shri Guru Vastakam Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Go ahead, repeat. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire
Just the clouds are pouring water on the fire
to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence.
by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence.
I, from my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master,
Offer my respectful obeisance unto spiritual master,
who is an ocean of auspicious qualities,
who is the ocean,
chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing, and playing musical instruments.
chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, and
The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
spiritual master always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind.
Because in relation to the mellow pure devotion is mind.
Sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body,
He's quivering his body,
and tears flow from his eyes like torrents, tears flow from his eyes like waves.
and tears flow from his eyes like waves.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances to such
The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna.
The master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and
He also engages his disciples in such worship.
and he engages his disciples in such worship.
They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments.
They purity with clothing ornaments.
clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord.
Clean the temple and perform other similar.
I offer my respectful obeisance at the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance to such a spiritual master.
So we'll recite these first 4 verses every day, and then eventually the whole thing. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, verse number 23. Jivan Chavo Bhagavatam Grirenum
Vanchavo Bhagavatam Grirenum
Najata Martyo Bilabeta Yastu
Najatu Matyo Bilabhita Yastu
Shri Vishnu Padya Manujastu Lasya
Shri Vishnu Padya Manujastu Lasya
Swasan Chavo Yastu Nadveda Gandham.
Swasan Chavo Yastu Naveda Gandham.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The person who has not at any time received the dust of the feet of the Lord's pure devotee upon his head is certainly a dead body. And the person who has never experienced the aroma of the tulsi leaves from the lotus feet of the Lord is also a dead body, although breathing. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. According to Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur, the breathing dead body is a ghost. When a man dies, he's called dead. But when he again appears in a subtle form not visible to our present vision, and yet acts, such a dead body is called a ghost. Ghosts are always very bad elements, always creating a fearful situation for others. Similarly, the ghost-like non-devotees who have no respect for the pure devotees, nor for the Vishnu deity in the temples, create a fearful situation for the devotees at all times. The Lord never accepts any offering by such impure ghosts. So in other words, there's 2 types of ghosts. One is the walking dead ghost, right? He's actually alive, but he's considered dead because he never never has respect for the pure devotees nor the Vishnu deities in the temple. And the ones who have died and committing great sins, such as suicide or something like that, and then they get a ghost body, although they're not seen, but they cause a lot of trouble. Okay. The Lord never accepts any offering by such impure ghosts. There is a common saying that one should first love the dog of the beloved before one shows any loving sentiments for the beloved. The stage of pure devotion is attained by sincerely serving a pure devotee of the Lord. The first condition of devotional service to the Lord is therefore to be a servant of a pure devotee, and this condition is fulfilled by the statement, reception of the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee who has also served another pure devotee. That is the way of pure disciplic succession or devotional parampara. Maharaj Rahugana inquired from the great sage Jad Bharata as to how he had attained such a liberated stage of Paramahansa. And in answer, the great saint replied, Bhagavad Gita 5:12-12, Ragunaita tapasa chayati nachidya niravapanad vihadva nachitanda sadnaiva jalangni suryar vinamahat padarajo visakam. O King Rahugana, the perfectional stage of devotional service, or the Paramahansa stage of life, cannot be attained unless one is blessed by the dust of the feet of great devotees. It is never attained by tapasya, austerity, the Vedic worshipping process, acceptance of the renounced order of life, the discharge of the duties of household life, the chanting of Vedic hymns, or the performance of penances in the hot sun, within cold water, or before the blazing fire. In other words, Lord Sri Krishna is the property of his pure, unconditional devotees, and as such, only the devotees can deliver Krishna to another devotee. Krishna is never obtainable directly. Lord Chaitanya therefore designated himself as Gopi Bhartur Padakamalayur Dasa Dasanu Dasa, or the most obedient servant of the servants of the Lord, who maintains the Gopi damsels at Vrindavana. A pure devotee therefore never approaches the Lord directly, but tries to please the servant of the Lord's servants, and thus the Lord becomes pleased, and only then can the devotee relish the taste of the tulsi leaves stuck to his lotus feet. In the Brahma Samhita it is said that the Lord is never to be found by becoming a great scholar of the Vedic literatures, but he is very easily approachable through his pure devotee. In Vrindavana, all the pure devotees pray for the mercy of Srimati Radharani, the pleasure potency of Lord Krishna. Srimati Radharani is a tender-hearted feminine counterpart of the Supreme Whole, resembling the perfectional stage of the worldly feminine nature. Therefore, the mercy of Radharani is available very readily to the sincere devotees, and once she recommends such a devotee to Lord Krishna, the Lord at once accepts the devotee's admittance into his association. The conclusion is, therefore, that one should be more serious about seeking the mercy of the devotee than that of the Lord directly, and by one's doing so, by the goodwill of the devotee, the natural attraction for the service of the Lord will be revived. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The person who has not at any time received the dust of the feet of the Lord's pure devotee upon his head is certainly a dead body. And the person who has never experienced the aroma of the tulsi leaves from the lotus feet of the Lord is also a dead body, although breathing. So, very nice points made in this purport and verse. So we can understand now there are many ghosts in this world. There are ones that have bodies that we can see, and there are ones that don't have bodies that we can see. And they're both dangerous. How do you know if someone who has a body and you can see them is a ghost? They always talk nonsense. That's how you can tell. You can go in different places in Seattle, like Pioneer Square or Capitol Hill and other places, and you can see people walking down the street talking to themselves. Have you ever seen that? That's a person who has become seized by a ghost. The ghost has entered their body and is controlling them. So we see that there are ghosts that we can see who have material bodies, and there are ghosts that we can't see who don't have a material body but a subtle body. And they're always talking nonsense or doing nonsensical things that disturb others. So Prabhupada said, ghosts are always very bad elements, always creating a fearful situation for others. And then similarly, the ghost-like non-devotees who have no respect for pure devotees nor for the Vishnu deity in the temples create a fearful situation for devotees at all times. So we have two types of ghosts. This is science. This is real science. Right? So, the Lord never accepts any offering by such impure ghosts. So we have to become very careful not to become a walking, talking, visible ghost. And obviously we don't want to become a non-visible, always creating a non-visible ghost who always creates trouble and fear for others. Even a visible ghost causes fear to others by talking nonsense and threatening and intimidating people and so forth. Okay, so then one can attain pure devotional service only by serving a pure devotee of the Lord. So, therefore, Krishna says, Yasya prasada, bhagavat prasada, Yasya prasadana nagatir katopi, dayam strutvam stasya yasastri sandam, ande gurorshi charanadavindam. That it's only by the mercy of the devotee that one can obtain the grace or mercy of Krishna. Without the mercy of the devotee, one cannot make any spiritual advancement. Therefore, at least 3 times a day I should offer my respectful obeisances to my spiritual master, who is an ocean of mercy. Right? So, the process in Krishna consciousness is to accept a bona fide spiritual master, and with 3 attitudes: submissiveness, asking significant questions, and offering service. And then the atmosphere becomes very propitious for the exchange of questions and answers about spiritual life. So the first condition of devotional service to the Lord is therefore to be a servant of a pure devotee, and this condition is fulfilled by the statement, reception of the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee who has also served another pure devotee. That's the important point. Now, what does it mean by a pure? Well, you have levels of purity in devotional service called Kanishta Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, and Uttama Adhikari. So, one should accept Uttama Adhikari, but one can also accept a Madhyama Adhikari. But the Madhyama Adhikari cannot successfully take the disciple completely back to Godhead. But what does the Madhyama Adhikari do? He always refers the disciple to either more advanced devotees or to the hearing constantly of the words of Krishna and the acharyas. Then the whole process works. So that's the most important thing. Therefore, the Madhyama Adhikari will always engage the disciples in hearing and chanting about Krishna and hearing the purports of Prabhupada and the acharyas. So in that way, you have the safe, let's say, process of making spiritual advancement, eventually leading to going back to Godhead. So it says that the reception of dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee who has also served another pure devotee, that is the way of pure disciplic succession or devotional parampara. So parampara means that there is a succession of spiritual masters who are engaged in the pure service of the Lord. They have no other desire than to please Radha and Krishna. And thus they engage their disciples also in doing that. Just like we just read, how does the spiritual master engage the disciples? Well, it is Shivigrahara Dhananityanana Shingaratan Mandira Marjanado Yuktasya Bhaktamscha Niyunjatopi Vande Gurorsi Jananavindam. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. So this is the whole process of Krishna consciousness, and it's very scientific. If we follow the process, we get the result. Result is, as we read yesterday, and we're going to hear again today, the result is we become blessed by Krishna to purify all our desires and thus desire only to please Guru and Krishna and not any other desires. This is a very important point This was explained by Narada Muni, by Prahlad Maharaj in Canto 7, Chapter 10, where he says, Yadi dasyasi me kamam varams tvam varadar sabha kamanam hidi asam roham bhavatas tu rene varam. O my Lord, best of the givers of benediction, if you at all want to bestow a desirable benediction upon me, then I pray from your Lordship that within the core of my heart there will be no material desires. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught us how to pray for benedictions from the Lord. He said, Nadanam na janam na sundarim kavitam va jagadishikamaya mama janmani jamanishwari bhavatat bhaktira haituki twai. O my Lord, I do not want from you any amount of wealth, nor many followers, nor a beautiful wife, for these are all materialistic desires. But if I have to ask you for any benediction, I pray that in whatever forms of life I may take my birth, under any circumstances, I will not be bereft of your transcendental devotional service. Devotees are always, in other words, he's not asking for liberation either. This is an alternate translation of the verse, the same verse that we recite every day. Devotees are always on the positive platform in contrast to the Mayavadis, who want to make everything impersonal or void. One cannot remain void, sunyavadi. Rather, one must possess something. Therefore, the devotee, on the positive side, wants to possess something. And this possession is very nicely described by Prahlad Maharaj, who says, if I must take some benediction from you, I pray that within the core of my heart there will be no material desires. The desire to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not at all material. So the Mayavadis, they want to make everything void. So they say all desires are nonsense, even a desire to serve Krishna. You have to give up everything. And to give them some phony scriptural evidence, obviously it doesn't exist, they say that Krishna is the sum total of tamasa buddhi, intelligence and ignorance. So they are the worst operatis in this world. They're worse than the atheists, they're worse than the asuras and so forth. They're worse. They insult Krishna worse than everybody else. So therefore, one should definitely avoid hearing the commentary of such atheists and Mayavadis, because they will inevitably insult Krishna. And then Prahlad Maharaj says, Indriyani mana prana atma dharmo dritir mati Hri Shrish Teja Smriti Satyam Yasya Nasyanti Janmana. O my Lord, because of lusty desires from the very beginning of one's birth, the function of one's senses, mind, life, body, religion, patience, intelligence, shyness, opulence, strength, memory, and truthfulness are vanquished, are destroyed, are defeated. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, as stated in Srimad Bhagvatam, Kaman Hrit Rogam. Materialistic life means that one is afflicted by a formidable desire called lusty desires. Liberation means freedom from lusty desires because it is only due to such desires that one must accept repeated birth and death. As long as one's lusty desires are unfulfilled, one must take birth after birth to fulfill them. Now let's think about this. This is very advanced philosophy that most people never hear, what we just read. Here's Prahlad Maharaj is only 5 years old, and he has such a clear understanding of how this material nature works. That's why it says this is science. We're learning how material nature works and binds us to the material world. And therefore, he's saying, if you want to bless me that I have no material desires. So that doesn't mean no desires. It means no material desires. And that's why Prabhupada says that a desire to serve Krishna is not a material desire. The desire to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not at all material. It's a spiritual desire, as opposed to a material desire. But for the Mayavadis, there's no such thing as a spiritual desire. And for the Buddhists also, there's no such thing as a spiritual desire. There's nothing. There's no Vaikuntha, there's no Goloka, there's no Krishna, there's no Nanda Maharaj and Yasoda, there's no Radharani. There's nothing. And as one black minister said on the phone, on the radio once, when he was asking people for a donation, he said, nothing of nothing is always nothing. In other words, if you don't send me any money, I'm not going to have any money. And I can't continue preaching to you on the radio. That's why I said nothing of nothing is always nothing, right? Well, for the Maya, this is very apt for the Mayavadis. You know, they want to make everything nothing, and nothing of nothing is always nothing, right? You end up with nothing. So, but Krishna consciousness, you end up with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So take your choice. You want nothing or you want Krishna. So then it says that liberation means freedom from lusty desires because it is only due to such desires that one must accept repeated birth and death. And all you need is only one lusty desire. It completely contaminates all these things, functions of one's senses, functions of the mind, of life, body, religion, patience, intelligence, shyness, opulence, strength, memory, and truthfulness. They're all destroyed by only one material desire. But people are walking around with millions of material desires. And no one's explaining to them why they're suffering. So if someone calls you up from India and says, oh, it's terrible here, there's no oxygen tanks, and so-and-so is in the hospital, they can't get an oxygen tank, and this thing. Well, what is the cure? You tell me what the cure is. Is it oxygen tank? No. It's lusty desires. See? It's like, I know a person who was always complaining about their family and always arguing about money in the family. Well, what does that mean? That means that everybody in the family has lusty desires. That's what it means. Whenever there's fighting about money, it means that people have very strong lusty desires, right? And if one of the family members gets COVID or gets a heart attack or gets cancer, what's the cause? Lusty desires. That's the cause. You want to be healthy? Get rid of the lusty desires and replace them with desires to please Krishna. You'll get healthy. You'll get protected. That's the vaccine against all disease, against all problems of life. But of course, no one's explaining this. They're saying, oh, you have to depend on the vaccine. But don't take the Aztec one, take this other one that's better. It's a bunch of nonsense. I'm not against vaccines, but I'm just saying everybody is trying to find a solution, but the solution is getting rid of lusty desires. That's the solution. It's not the vaccine. It's not this pill or this doctor or that doctor or this procedure or that procedure. It's lusty desires. And Prabhupada says they start right from birth. Kamam hit rogam means the real sickness of the heart. Hit means the heart. Rogam means sickness. It's kamam. Lusty desires is the real sickness. And what is the whole point of material life? Lusty desires, right? What is the Me Too hashtag about? Lusty desires. What is Bill Gates cheating on his wife about? Lusty desires. What is Bezos trashing his wife and getting somebody else's wife? Lusty desires. You go down the line, it's all lusty desires. This is the sickness of the heart. It's right in the heart. And Prabhupada says, materialistic life means that one is afflicted by a formidable disease called lusty desire. Liberation means freedom from lusty desires, because it is only due to such desires that one must accept repeated birth and death. As long as one's lusty desires are unfulfilled, one must take birth after birth to fulfill them. Because of material desires, therefore, one performs various types of activities and receives various types of bodies with which to try to fulfill desires that are never satisfied. The only remedy is to take the devotional service, which means when one is free from all material desires. Anya bilasita sunyam. Anya abilasita means material desire, and sunyam means free from. The spiritual soul has spiritual activities and spiritual desires, as described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mama Janmani, Janmanishware, Bhavatad Bhaktira Haituki Tvai. He's saying, I don't want this, I don't want that. I only want your devotional service, birth after birth. So he doesn't say, I don't want this, I don't want that, I don't want this, I don't want that, I don't want this, I don't want that. No, he says, but I do want devotional service, birth after birth. So, therefore, everything we're hearing is wrong. Everything we're hearing is wrong in the material world. They're always misleading and misrepresenting what the truth is. See? I remember when I was a kid, and sometimes some of the elder members of the family would talk to me and say, sonny, you got to get a good education. That way you can make good money. And then you can have all the nice things that we have, cars and houses and boats and vacations and things like that. So you get a good education, you go to college, and then you get a good job, and then you can get all these things. And also, don't forget that in our family, every Sunday we eat chicken and we drink whiskey. You have to drink whiskey to be a man. Right? Here, drink this little glass of whiskey. Be a man. This is nonsense, right? They're filling the heads of kids with nonsense all the time, right? And what do you expect the kids to do when their own parents are telling them this, and their uncles and aunties are telling them this, and they're talking about vaccines, and they're talking about make money, and arguing over money, right? One time some rich man came up to Sadhu and said, Sadhuji, this is $500, I want you to have it. And the Sadhu said, can I ask you a question? He said, yeah, what's that? He said, do you like money? He said, yes. He said, do you want more money? He said, yes. He said, you keep the $500. You see, that's the whole thing, It's always the opposite of what we expect. And that's the material world. It's everything we're learning, everything we're hearing is always wrong in the material world. And they never put the finger on the real cause of the problem. So now today we heard the real cause of the problem. Kamam hrit rogam. The real cause of the problem is these lusty desires. And we're educated to have them. We're educated by family members, by schools, by universities, by everything. It's all about lusty desires. So therefore Prabhupada says here that as soon as one has material desires, one loses his spiritual identity. So if you're asking me, oh, my kid, the kid was okay before, but now he's going to high school and he's acting very funny, not really interested so much. Well, what do you expect? Right? Everywhere they turn, there's just lusty desires. And no one's telling them the problem with those lusty desires. They're telling them it's okay. See? It's the right thing to do in life. So, therefore, Prabhupada says, unalloyed devotion to the service of the Lord is the only spiritual desire. To fulfill this spiritual desire, however, one must be free from all material desires. Desirelessness means freedom from material desires. This is described by Srila Rupa Goswami as anya bilasita sunyam. As soon as one has material desires, one loses his spiritual identity. Then all the paraphernalia of one's life, including one's senses, body, religion, patience, and intelligence, are deviated from one's original Krishna consciousness. As soon as one has material desires, one cannot properly use the senses, intelligence, mind, and so on for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality Godhead. Mayavadi philosophers want to become impersonal, senseless, and mindless, but that's not possible. The living entity must be living, always existing with desires, ambitions, and so on. Purified, however, so that one can desire spiritually and be spiritually ambitious, without material contamination. Wow, what a statement that is by Prabhupada. To be spiritually ambitious without material ambition. So the Mayavadis say, no, this is all nonsense. Don't listen to what he's saying here. You can't be spiritually ambitious. You have to give up all ambitions. You have to give up all desires. You have to sit in a cold, dank, dark cave in the Himalayas and meditate on nothing. Or meditate on the light, the internal light. This is all nonsense. This is crazy. Who's going to do that? Nobody's going to do that. You know, one crazy person will do that. Just like a friend of mine was telling me that his best friend that he grew up with and went to school with became a Mayavadi sannyasi. And he lived in the Himalayas in a dark cave. And they were communicating every once in a while, not every day, because his friend didn't have a cell phone. And every once in a while his friend would come down to buy some things, or else sometimes it was so cold he couldn't stay in the Himalayas. He would come down and he would communicate over the years. And finally he told me, you know, my friend was doing that for so many years. Now he gave up. Went back to normal life. Yeah, because you try it. You see if you can do it. Sit in that cave in the freezing cold and meditate on what? On nothing? Or on some light that's in the brain somewhere? It's crazy. But yet, people think this is the way to attain perfection in life. The living entity must be living, always existing with desires, ambitions, and so on. These should be purified, however, so that one can desire spiritually and be spiritually ambitious without material contamination. In every living entity, these propensities exist because he's a living entity. When materially contaminated, however, one is put into the hands of material misery, janma mityu jara vyadi. If one wants to stop repeated birth and death. In other words, if one wants to stop COVID, if one wants to stop cancer, if one wants to stop old age, if one wants to stop death and sickness and all these things, what's the solution? Get rid of kaman hrit rogam. This lusty desires in the heart. There's no other solution. And the only way to do that is by pure devotional service. When materially contaminated, however, one is put into the hands of material misery, janma mityu jara vyadi. If one wants to stop repeated birth and death, one must take to the devotional service of the Lord. Sarvapadi vinir muktam tatparat vena nirmalan. Hrishikesha sevanam bhaktir uttama uchyate. Bhakti or devotional service means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and simply by being employed in the service of the Lord, one's senses are purified. So, therefore, now we've finished this purport. The best part of this purport today is, in other words, Lord Sri Krishna is the property of his pure, unconditional devotees. And as such, only the devotees can deliver Krishna to another devotee. Krishna is never obtainable directly. Lord Chaitanya therefore designated himself as Gopi Bhartar Padakamalaya, or Dasa Dasa Dasanu Das, or the most obedient servant of the servants of the Lord, who maintains the Gopi damsels at Vrindavana. In other words, the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of the Gopis, who are the servants of Krishna. So Dasa 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 Dasanu Dasa. A pure devotee, therefore, never approaches the Lord directly, but tries to please the servant of the Lord's servants, and thus the Lord becomes pleased. And only then can the devotee relish the taste of the tulasi leaves stuck to the Lord's lotus feet. In the Brahma Samhita it is said that the Lord is never to be found by becoming a great scholar of the Vedic literatures, but he is very easily approachable through his pure devotee. In Vrindavana, all the pure devotees pray for the mercy of Srimati Radharani, the pleasure potency of Lord Krishna. Srimati Radharani is a tender-hearted feminine counterpart of the Supreme Whole, resembling the perfectional stage of the worldly feminine nature. Therefore, the mercy of Radharani is available very readily to the sincere devotees, and once she recommends such a devotee to Lord Krishna, the Lord at once accepts the devotee's admittance into his association. The conclusion is, therefore, that one should be more serious about seeking the mercy of the devotees than that of the Lord directly. And by one's doing so, by the goodwill of the devotee, the natural attraction for the service of the Lord will be revived. Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavane Ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi. Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Are there any questions? This is high quality knowledge, very high quality. Speaking of my,
Hare Krishna Maharaj, my question is there something called lusty desire in devotion? And if it is there, is that good?
well, whenever there is a description of the gopis' love for Krishna, sometimes they use the word lust. Sometimes that word is used. But you see, whatever is in the material world, which is contaminated, exists in the spiritual world. So there is contaminated lust and there is pure lust. Now what's the difference? Well, the difference is the object of the desire. Lust is excessive desire. Right? So if the object is Krishna, then it's a good thing. And if the object is somebody else other than Krishna, it's a bad thing. So in the material world, lust is considered very bad because it's trying to take advantage of another person for your own sense gratification. But lust in the spiritual world is a good thing because you want to completely dedicate yourself to pleasing Krishna. So this is why Krishna consciousness is so difficult to be understood by the karmis, by the materialists, by the vishayis, the sense gratifiers. Because they say, hey, wait a minute, this Krishna is doing exactly what I'm doing, right? I'm out there searching for this victim and that victim for my sense gratification. And he's got all these wives and he's got all these girlfriends beside these wives. Well, that's the same thing, but it's much more amplified. See? So they don't understand anything. And one time there was a real estate agent in France who was trying to help us find a new temple. And this was a real gross Frenchman. And he had a funny way of talking. He would always go, alors je suis là, et je vais vous dire, he would talk like that. I don't know why he did that, but every sentence or so he'd go like that. It's the funniest thing I ever saw. So he was talking nonsense about, finding this place, that place. And then I said, my friend, I said, I want to offer you this gift, And he said, qu'est-ce que c'est? I said, it's a holy book. And then I showed him a picture of Sukadeva Goswami, who was walking past these gopis, or these women who were bathing, and they were, and he was naked, and they were trying to hide their nakedness. Right? It's a story of how he left his mother and father and went naked walking, and his father was following him. Vyasadeva was following him, and he walked past this sort of lake or river where the young ladies were bathing, and they were also naked. So he looked at it, the picture, for a long time. He said, "Tu sais, ça c'est vraiment spirituel." And I said, he said, you know, this is really spiritual. So I said, what do you see? He said, I see naked women and naked men. He said, this is spiritual. So I said, wait a minute. I don't think you're seeing properly. He said, what do you mean? I know what you're talking about. I know what I'm seeing. You know. So what he was seeing was not what is in the picture. He was projecting his confused, corrupt mind onto that photo. Then I tried to explain to him what it was, and he just couldn't understand. It was impossible for him to understand. So this is the difference between lust in the material world, and when they use the word lust in this, when they're talking about the gopis' love for Krishna, sometimes it's not the same thing. It's the purified form. So, and that's what Prabhupada's saying in this purport that we read today, that one has to purify the desires, right? And he says, Anya Bilasita means material desires, sunyam, free from. When one is free from all material desires, then one engages in devotional service. And it's different. Although the activities look the same, but it's different then. And that's why when you hear about the gopis' love for Krishna, people don't understand it. They don't understand that there's a person who has no personal material desires. Their only desire is to please Krishna. They don't understand that because they don't, that's not their culture. So this is a big subject, and we can talk about it again. Haribol. If you really want to meet crazy people, you go to France. Because you'll meet some of the craziest people in this whole world. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Maharaj, one question that we read in 7.10.7. The statement we read, Prahlad Maharaj, who says, if I must take some benediction from you, I pray that within the core of my heart, there may be no material desires.
Right.
But what we generally pray to Krishna, like always engage me in your service, devotional service. So is it fine to pray like this as well? That there may be no material desires.
Lord Nrsingadev was offering him, emphatically, take some benediction from me. That's why he's saying, if I must take some benediction. Before that he said, I don't want anything, because I know how to chant your holy name. I'm engaged in your service. I don't really want anything. And then the Lord was sort of insistent. So he said, okay, if you're going to give me some benediction, I pray that within the core of my heart there would be no material desires. But then later on, he does ask the Lord. If we go a little further in this chapter, he says that, please free my father, who is so sinful. He says, O Supreme Lord, because, this is verse 17, because you are so merciful to the fallen souls, I ask you for only one benediction. I know that my father, at the time of his death, had already been purified by your glance upon him, but because of his ignorance of your beautiful power and supremacy, he was unnecessarily angry at you, falsely thinking that you were the killer of his brother. Thus he directly blasphemed your lordship, the supreme master of all living beings, and committed heavily sinful activities directed against me, your devotee. I wish that he be excused for these sinful activities. But then Krishna says, or Narasingha says, my dear Prahlad, O most pure, O saintly person, great saintly person, your father has been purified, along with 21 forefathers in your family. Because you were born in this family, the entire dynasty has been purified. So, therefore, if you want to become really a benefactor of your family and of your whole dynasty, going back at least 21 generations, that when you go back 21 generations, you're going to go outside of your family. And because 21 births before, you could have been born as an animal, you could have been born as a demon or whatever. So all those people are going to get purified if you become a pure devotee. So therefore, Prahlad Maharaj heard something amazing, that not only his father was purified by the fact that he's a pure devotee, but 21 generations in his family were also purified. Okay? So we don't really understand the power of pure devotional service. We're just learning about it as we go along. So what was your question?
So my question was, we always continuously pray to Krishna that please always engage me in your devotional service.
Yeah.
So is it a right prayer to do, like that?
Look,
maybe I have no material
spiritual
desires.
desire is not a material desire.
Yeah.
Get that in your mind.
Yes. So my question is, shall we pray like this as well, that I may have no material desires? This is like a negative way
You're
of
already praying like that.
Okay.
Nadanam, najanam, nasundarim, kavitam va jagadisha kamaye, mama janmani, janmanishvare, bhavatad bhaktira haituki tvai. This word, ahaituki, means completely, purified. No material desire. It's already there. See, the Shikshastakam of Lord Chaitanya contains everything. That's why we recite it every day. So what is the translation of that? That I don't want any wealth, I don't want beautiful victims of my sense gratification, I don't want any followers, I don't want to be a guru, I don't want to be this or that, some big guy with servants, or king, or whatever. All I want is your devotional service, birth after birth. So, there's no material desire there. There's just devotional service. Okay? So you're already making that prayer. Besides chanting Hare Krishna, which means the same thing. Right? I don't want anything material, I just want your service. Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Okay, let's make money and spend it. Sense